In a previous video, I went over the joys of the PS TV here in 2023. While its growth was stunted during its lifespan, it's managed to have a second life as pretty much the best way to play PlayStation Vita games on a large screen. But it's important to note that it's not the only way. Despite the Vita lacking any ports for video out, there have been a couple ways to get what's on the Vita's small screen to a much larger display. For this video, we'll be discussing specifically one method, the VitaDockPlus. VitaDockPlus is a Raspberry Pi image that, when paired with a few plugins on a modded Vita, allows a Raspberry Pi to interface with a Vita and pass a video signal to a connected display. In many ways, this setup's very much like a switch dock with a couple extra steps. The image itself was released by GitHub user Silent Knight a few years back, and has been updated about once per year to fix various issues, decrease user frustrations, and add a plethora of new features. What started as a basic follow-up to a previous VitaDock project now supports a multitude of Raspberry Pi iterations, multiple display resolutions, Nintendo Switch docking, and various other tools that tinkerers should undoubtedly appreciate. In fact, to get set up, all you really need is a modded Vita, a few cables, and any Raspberry Pi. Currently, models from 0 to 4 are officially supported. Using the Raspberry Pi imager to flash the latest VitaDockPlus release to an SD card takes about 10 to 15 minutes, which is more than enough time to install two necessary plugins to the PS Vita. The first one is Mini Vita TV, which allows a Vita to run like a PlayStation TV, DualShock 4 connectivity and all. And the second is Vita UDCD UVC, which allows a Vita to output a UVC signal via a USB connection. For my setup, I have a Raspberry Pi 4 in a desk Pi case I've had forever, paired with a modded Vita Slim with a stand I bought on eBay a while back. If you're feeling extra fancy with your setup, there's even a number of 3D printed dock designs linked on the VitaDockPlus GitHub page to help sell this as a complete docking solution. Altogether, getting everything prepped and set up took me under 30 minutes, from downloading the image off GitHub to launching a game, which is honestly pretty great. Many Raspberry Pi-centric projects can take a full afternoon to fine-tune, but this is literally as plug-and-play as flashing a new OS to a computer could be. I dig it. If there was one hassle overall that I feel might tick certain people off, it's audio. While the UVC connection allows for a solid video feed, it seems like it can't carry an audio signal. As a result, by default, audio will come out of the Vita when plugged into a dock. For folks who might want to get better quality audio or play from a distance, that's obviously not a great solution. Luckily, the GitHub page for VitaDockPlus recommends two dock-centric audio solutions. Connect the Vita directly to the dock over Bluetooth, or using a 3.5mm jack. Unluckily, neither solution seemed to work well for me. Connecting via Bluetooth didn't seem to stream the audio at all. Likewise, a wired connection, either with or without a USB adapter, didn't function as expected. I can't necessarily speak as to why the Bluetooth connection didn't work, but I'm certain the wired connection is entirely due to my personal Raspberry Pi 4 not supporting audio in completely. Or else maybe the adapter I have on hand not working with this particular setup. Your mileage may vary. I'll leave links in the description to a few audio adapters recommended on the GitHub page for folks who find themselves in a similar situation. For now, I found the easiest solution for me to be pairing my Vita to this nifty BenQ Bluetooth speaker I reviewed a while back. It synced perfectly, worked perfectly, couldn't recommend it enough. Okay, enough setup details. How's performance looking? Well, surprisingly good. Playing a few games with this setup for a few hours, performance feels incredibly similar to plugging in my PS TV. That shouldn't be surprising considering they're using approximately the same hardware, but it was kind of surprising given how I've read some folks talking about their own VitaDockPlus setups in the past. With that being said, there are a couple small oddities with regards to input latency to keep in mind. The first is that each time I plug in my Vita to the dock, it takes about a minute for the dock to warm up. During that warm-up period, there was a noticeable delay between what's happening on my Vita compared to what's being shown through the dock's output. But if I'm patient and wait for the dock to catch up, everything works out fine in the end. The other oddity has to do with the output resolution of the Raspberry Pi. By default, a Raspberry Pi, like most computers, will adjust to the resolution of whatever display it's connected to. While testing the dock with a 4K display, I experienced a ton of input latency on the output, as well as video that would slow down and speed up randomly. This is entirely due to the limitations of the Raspberry Pi 4. It's not a device that's meant to output at 4K and struggles when pushed to do so. In fact, when I went into the display settings and turned down the resolution to 1080p, everything worked just fine after a reboot. I have a feeling that many folks who experience issues with Vita docks are likely feeling some of the limitations associated with Raspberry Pis, instead of the software or Vita connection not working as intended. Because once everything's dialed in, it feels almost the same to play on as a PS TV. Overall, with the appropriate resolution set in system settings, output through the dock actually looks pretty great. Well, as great as video output could look through a PS Vita over a micro USB connection. By default, the dock software provides the option to output resolutions of either 864 by 488 at up to 60 frames per second, or 960 by 544 at up to 30 frames per second. For those willing to put in a tiny bit more effort, 720p output is supposedly available via the Sharpscale plugin. However, I haven't personally been able to get it to work. The two default presets look pretty good by themselves though. Considering how low both the supported resolutions are, it should be expected that some graphics are going to look a bit crispy around the edges. I'd imagine a setup like this would be perfect for use with an upscaler. Still, they're perfectly playable resolutions on a larger screen and accomplish the stated goal of getting what's on my Vita's display to my monitor or capture card. All the crunchy video in the world is still worth being able to play Vita games on a large screen with the DualShock 4 support available with the dock. Yes, folks could always download a plugin to their Vita to use an external controller. But the display is a bit too small to prop up on a table to use with a controller, typically, and mounting it to a controller like a smartphone also feels cursed in ways I can't quite articulate. But with the dock, the DualShock 4 input makes perfect sense, and the mini PS TV plugin manages to even unlock the expanded control schemes of the PS TV. For folks who already have a Vita who don't want to invest in a PS TV, this could be a great way to re-experience a ton of different games with an expanded, much more comfortable control scheme. Know that controller support also comes with the same touch-based downsides as the PS TV though. If you have touch-based games you want on a larger screen, it's still awkward with a full-size controller. Fortunately, unlike the PS TV, you do have the option to just use your Vita as a controller for this setup. It doesn't feel terrible and definitely makes certain games that require touch input feel much more responsive. The likelihood of my USB cable coming dislodged does give me some pause. A wired connection at all feels kind of awkward, to be honest. But getting past that, it feels pretty good and might be a way to best play certain games that wouldn't work well with a PS TV. Now, given how well VitaDockPlus works, does that mean the PS TV's dedicated solution is completely unnecessary? Well, not quite. As quick as it was to set up my Vita dock, the actual setup isn't quite as clean as plugging in a PS TV. It takes up more space, there's more cables going on, and the usual output isn't quite as clean as the PS TV. Not to mention, the Vita's display remains on while it's connected, which is a bit distracting. The Vita also slow charges while connected, which is either a blessing or a curse depending on how much wear that places on the battery. It's all a bit janky, and something that feels better in short bursts rather than as a permanent installation. If you were looking for something to frequently let you play Vita games on a large display, using a PS TV combined with cloud saves might still be the better route. It'll be an easier and a cleaner setup overall. To its credit though, the dock does have one trick up its sleeve that's much better than the PS TV. By default, I can plug my Vita into the dock and then the dock straight into my capture card to record gameplay footage without hassle. Meanwhile, the PS TV has HDCP protection built in that stops it from interfacing correctly with most capture cards, like the Elgato 4K 60 I have in my computer. To capture footage from the PS TV back during my previous videos, I needed to either use my Genki Shadowcast or invest in an HDCP compliant HDMI splitter that makes the video out signal compatible with capture cards. That extra setup adds extra complexity. And isn't that great? For streamers looking to just feature a specific game on their stream or video creators looking to grab some quick footage from a game, the Vita dock makes a ton of sense as a quick solution for folks who already have a Vita and a Raspberry Pi on hand. For me personally, I'm not throwing away my PS TV anytime soon. The convenience of such a tiny micro console over a bulky setup like this seems pretty obvious. However, it's been a blast as a fun side project, and it makes me want to tinker a bit to design my own dock that fit my own Pi and Vita. If you're someone who has a Vita but not a PS TV and wants to try playing on a larger screen, I do think VitaDockPlus is an incredibly functional solution that you shouldn't overlook, considering the price of a Raspberry Pi and case is much cheaper than the standard going rate of a PS TV these days. But hey, those are my thoughts. I'd love to know yours. Have you set up a VitaDockPlus in the past and have thoughts of your own? Or is this setup something interesting that you might consider trying? Let me know down in the comments. As always, if you found this video interesting or informative, go ahead and click that like button and then get subscribed for more video game tech videos in the future. You can find me over on the various socials I have shown on the screen somewhere. I still can't figure out where this actually shows up. But hey, for as little as $1 per month, you can also find me over on Patreon, where I post ad-free videos early, as well as a bunch of extra content. As a companion to this video, I wrote out some extra thoughts on the VitaDockPlus setup process and threw in a side-by-side comparison of VitaDock and PS TV gameplay on a variety of different games. Definitely check it out if you're interested in VitaDockPlus as a gameplay recording solution or are on the fence between a Raspberry Pi build or slapping down some extra cash for a PS TV. That's going to be all for this video though. Until next time, catch you later.